All right, folks, thank you all for joining us on our webinar today. I appreciate that everyone who is online right now, that you all joined on time, but also just to make sure that we have more folks who are able to join us and to not necessarily get started and have them miss out on anything, we'll wait just a minute longer here. So what we'll do is we'll start at 9:02. Like I said, I do appreciate everyone who joined on time. I do recognize that we all have very busy schedules. And what I do hope is that what I'm sharing today will be worth your time. So now that it is 9:02, I wanted to thank you all again and welcome you all to our webinar today. Your Market Demystified, how Quid's latest Q agents go beyond social to give you a holistic view of your market. I'm Harvey Raniola. I'm the head of marketing here at Quid. I'll be presenting solo today, so I'm quite excited to be able to share my insights as well as some of my processes, as well as some anecdotes and stories that I've had over the last couple of years. I've been with the company now for a little bit more than 7 years. And this happened, I want to say earlier this month. Very excited to be able to show off what we're able to do these days, especially considering where we were 7 years ago. I did want to remind you all that we have a number of great resources that are available to you. This includes reports, webinars that are available on demand, our customer stories, you name it, we have it. If you're researching and trying to learn more about Quid, I suggest that's where you start. We do have filtering for different industries and use cases. So if there's something specific that you're looking for, please check out the resources page first. And if you're not able to find it there, please feel free to reach out to me and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to continue the conversations there. We also do want to let you all know that we'll be at a couple of upcoming events. So we have Shop Talk Spring in Las Vegas next month from March 24th to 26th. I do encourage you all, if you're going to be at the event, please schedule a meeting with us. We'd love to have a chat with you about helping you to be able to achieve your outcomes, or rather, or even whether or not you've been able to, or whether or not you have any stories that you're willing to share in terms of outcomes that we've been able to work with you on in achieving. We also have a webinar next month. As many of you know, we try to have at least one webinar a month, and the next one is actually going to be quite exciting because it's going to cover some of our newer capabilities in AskQ. So we will talk about AskQ a little bit during our webinar today, but we will go quite a bit more in depth and show off a couple of new things that will be available to you next month. All right, let's get to our agenda here. I know that not everyone who is on the webinar right now is familiar with Quid, so we'll do a brief introduction. After that, we'll talk a little bit about the importance of having a holistic view of your market. From there, we'll jump into our new Q agents, our new patents, our investments, and our earnings call Q agents. And then we'll talk about how we can aggregate all that data together and to be able to take action using AskQ. After that, we'll go into our Q&A section. I'll try my best to keep an eye on the Q&A widget here. I do encourage you all, over the course of the webinar, please feel free to ask questions. I'll try my best to get to them. I'm going to pull up the Q&A widget now. So as I'm presenting, feel free to drop in your questions. And if it's timely and relevant to the topic that I'm covering there, I'm happy to answer them right on the spot. If not, we'll wait until the end and cover it during our Q&A section. So with that, we'll jump right into our introduction about Quid. So many of you may already know us, but for those that don't, Quid has been in the consumer and market intelligence and insight space for more than 20 years. And really at the heart of what we do and what I feel like is truly a bread and butter is our AI. And it's been there from the start. We've worked with a number of different businesses across different industries globally. We'll show off some of the logos later on, and also within different roles at these companies and helping folks to really be able to break down a lot of these silos to help them to operate better, to be able to execute on broader strategies. And the way that we do this is in the past, it's been focused quite a bit on topics and inquiries, but now what we're also doing is we're helping folks to be able to understand their markets by building out models that reflect these markets so that anyone, regardless of whether it's someone in the C-suite down to the analysts who are doing a lot of the heavy lifting and analysis in the insights, that everyone could find value in extracting insights from Quid. And we make it significantly easier to do so these days. Now, for many of us in leadership we do have access to data that's immediately available to us. Many of us may be familiar with the data that we have around the utilization of our products, how much people are buying, the level of satisfaction from our customers, or even the ROI of our technology stack. But one of the challenges that we hear quite a bit is that while folks have a good grasp of this data, oftentimes when you start seeing changes that may be negative or something that's unexpected in this data, it's often too late to act on it, or it takes a significant amount of effort to be able to get up to speed and ensure that you're either mitigating the damage or trying to get ahead of it as much as possible so that you could avoid it in the future. What Quid helps you to do is to understand what these factors are that are driving those changes in your internal data. So really what we help you to do is to understand your market. So whether it's different trends in your market or your competition doing one thing or another that may potentially impact you, or different events that are taking place all over the world that could potentially work their way into your customer base and impact the way that they interact with you and engage with you and purchase your products, we help you to gain that understanding. Really, what a lot of our webinar today is about is getting a full understanding and a 2020 perspective on your market. I mentioned earlier that one of the things that we do take pride in is enabling folks to have access to our insights, regardless of your level of comfort, regardless of your seniority at a company. We truly want to embody and enable you all to be able to democratize the insights that you're uncovering from Quid. And we have this as a way that we operate. We enable teams, regardless of whether you're in marketing, you're in sales, product, strategy, you name it. You can find value in utilizing Quid and to the level of detail that you need. And I referred to different market models earlier. Our models are comprised of different topics as well as our own AI and the way that we analyze and extract insights from it, the same way that you would see it through some of our core products like Quid Discover or Quid Monitor. But we also enable you to be able to access these insights not just through our AI agents, which we'll talk about today, but also through other means. We do have something that we're going to be announcing real soon that enables you to be able to access these insights through Microsoft Teams, through Slack, through an MCP, if you prefer to be able to interact with ChatGPT or Claude or any other AI chat platforms. We enable you to do just that so that we're working the way that you want to work, and we're ensuring that we model ourselves and that we operate in a way that doesn't disrupt what your flow looks like and really enables you. And we act as a partner to your team to ensure your success. I mentioned earlier that we work with a number of great companies all across the world, across different functions within these companies. And as a result of this, we get to hear a lot about really great stories about the way that they're utilizing Quid data. What we want to be able to show off today is that there's so much more that you're able to do, especially for the folks who may be focused on consumer conversations and insights. So I'm going to jump into the importance of having a holistic view of your market. And one of the quotes that I uncovered was a really interesting one from a couple of years ago. It was from the former chief product officer at Tableau, Francois Agenstein. Hopefully I pronounced his name correctly here. But one of his statements was that while 80% of business leaders say data is critical in decision making, 41% cite a lack of understanding of data because it is too complex or not accessible enough. And really, going back to the previous slide and me talking about how we enable teams to really break down silos and to be able to democratize those insights so that they're not staying with one team and that we're enabling other teams to be able to take advantage of those insights. That's what we want to be able to focus on here at Quid. And obviously, what we'll talk about in our webinar today should help you to be able to do just that. The second part of this quote is that what's more, 1/3 of leaders said that they lack the ability to generate insights from data. So it really just reinforces that point that even if they have access to significant volumes of data, it's still incredibly difficult to understand how to actually take action on that data. And I can certainly empathize with that. There's so much data out there that you could use to inform the decisions that you're making, the actions that you're taking. And really what Quid wants to help you to do is to be able to narrow down the scope to where it's items and different themes and narratives that you should be prioritizing. And an analogy that I've liked to use in previous webinars that I've done, where I've talked about different data sets and looking at them for a holistic perspective, is binocular vision. It's part of the reason I have a phoropter on the screen right now. But for many of us, we may be focused on extracting insights from news, from social, from forums, from review sites, different platforms where your potential customers are having conversations. And it's certainly important to be able to understand what these narratives are and what people are talking about. But the reason that I use this analogy of binocular vision, us having the ability to see out of both of our eyes, is because when you start looking at other data sets, specifically market data sets, patents that are being filed, financials, M&A activity, earnings calls, this gives you the same depth in understanding your market that you would in being able to see out of both your eyes. Because if you're not familiar, for folks who unfortunately are not able to have or not able to see out of both eyes for one reason or another, they don't have the ability to perceive depth. And I feel like that's a very apt analogy in terms of being able to see depth in your market, because in looking at patents data sets, in looking at earnings calls and financials, what you're able to do is to begin to forecast and look ahead to see what potential themes are emerging in these different channels and in these different data sets that could potentially work their way into the consumer conversations and narratives. And one of the stories that I like to share, I was actually mentioning to the team earlier that I wish I'd put together a slide for this, but a webinar that we did or a presentation that we did with Intel. Actually, we did both. We had a live presentation of this as well. But in the past, they've used our data to be able to create an M&A predictor tool that helped them to have an 87% success rate in identifying companies that are being acquired and investments that are being made. And they also, as a result of using our products, they had an acquisition portfolio that had a 40% return. So, in terms of being able to anticipate changes, when you think about this from the perspective of someone who may not be an M&A, who could be a marketer, there's so much potential gold that you could extract from this kind of data. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into our products. What I would like to be able to emphasize here is how Quid enables you to do exactly that. You don't have to be an analyst with significant hours logged in terms of utilizing Quid as a result of us being able to push insights from our models into Quid Terminal and give you different means of being able to engage with these models. We've what I like to think we've done here is truly democratizing access to this data and helping you to save time so that you could dive even deeper into the data and extract even more insights that could help you to paint a clearer and more complete picture of your market. So for the folks who are not familiar with Quid Terminal, hopefully many of you are, and you've had an opportunity to go around and play with it, to create briefs and to use Ask Q. But for those who are not familiar, let me just help you to get oriented with what we're looking at on the screen right now. So what you're seeing over here is our priority outcome. For all of our customers, what we like to be able to do is to develop and to understand what objectives they're trying to accomplish and build this into the models that we're creating for them. So this ends up being an input for all of the models that we have running through this terminal. You can see that we have 22 model components, different areas of focus that we're able to utilize in this terminal. You could also see that we have more than 173 million data points that are analyzed as part of this terminal. And you could see here that there were close to 2 million new data points that were added to this terminal in the last day. So there's a lot of information in here. And going back to that quote from the former chief product officer at Tableau, you could see why it's easy to get lost in the data and to not know where to look. But really what we want to be able to empower you to do is to be able to prioritize what's important to you, anchoring our insights to your priority outcomes to ensure that you're really focused on what's the most impactful. Over here, we have a couple of things that are also self-explanatory. We're covering English specifically in this terminal, but you do have the option of including more languages here. We're also covering 190 countries. In the context of this, it's English related posts and articles. And you could also see that we have a number of different sources that we're utilizing for the models in this terminal. Down here, we have our chat interface, and this is powered by AskQ. So I mentioned that we have a number of different models that are driving Quid Terminal. You can see that we have different models here that were made specifically for this example, and you can see that there are a number of different areas that we have these models packaged as, and obviously. If you're looking to create your own custom model, please work with your outcome engineer to be able to do so. But it's here that we can begin asking questions of these models and have data that is accessible to us in real time and insights that are accessible to us in real time. These are always running, these are always extracting insights. And you could think of you could think of the models like someone who is going in, running the analyses on our Quid Discover networks and through Quid Monitor and giving you the most salient and relevant points to your objectives. Down here, what you'll see are a number of different Q agents, and this is actually where we'll jump into the discussion about what's new with our Q agents, what we want to be able to highlight today in terms of our market data. But something that I did want to be able to emphasize before we go into the library is that we do have the industry's largest library of AI agents. You can see here that we also quantify how many hours you're saving as a result of utilizing these Q agents. And there are a number of different use cases that our customers are able to utilize this for. So let me jump right into the library. You can see here that we have a number of different filters. What we're going to focus on today are our company's data set, our corporate filings, as well as our patents. And something I do want to make note of here as well is that for many of these Q agents, we already have models that are built into them. So you don't necessarily have to request your own custom model to be able to drive these. You could actually click on one of these to open them up. And you don't need to specify a specific topic ID, a specific analysis ID. If you're familiar with the way that things work in Quid Monitor, we already have a model that's specifically powering this Q agent to be able to do the work that it needs and to create these briefs for you. I didn't touch on this before I jumped into this library, but for the folks who are not familiar, what our Q agents do is they extract relevant insights based on the use case for a given Q agent and create a brief that you're able to interact with, that you're able to share with your colleagues, that you're able to comment into as well. And we'll see a couple of those shortly. So before I jump into really drilling down into these data sets, what I want to be able to show you all is a brief that we were able to create 99% through our Q agents. And as much as possible, what we wanted to be able to do was to make this representative of all the different data sets that are available to you. That way, if you're using AskQ to be able to get a better understanding of what's relevant to you at this point, a brief like this enables you to be able to not just tap into consumer conversations and discussions on social media or what the latest TikTok trends are, although those are all part of this brief. It'll also help you to factor in the developments and the emerging trends from patent filings, as well as investments that are being made and discussions that are taking place during earnings calls. So I'm going to scroll through some of the components here just to show you. When I printed this out, it was roughly 50 pages. We don't necessarily expect anyone to go through 50 pages of insights and data, but that's exactly what AskQ allows you to be able to do, is really aggregate this information, ask it the questions that you need, and to be able to derive insights from all the data that's featured in this brief. But what I'll jump to here is you can see on the right side, we do have a table of contents. I'm going to jump to our patent landscape. And it's here. Sorry, I'm skimming through some of the TikTok stuff. There's some fun stuff in there, but we're not going to talk about that today. I will share this brief with everyone, or at least this will be included as part of our follow-up when the webinar is available on demand so that you can skim through this yourself. But what you'll see here is that we have a summary as well as the competitive landscape and white space opportunities and gaps in patent filings within the time frame that we're looking at. And if you're not familiar with our patents data set, we do go all the way back to 1960. We update this information on a weekly basis. So it's quite fresh when you think about it within the context of patents being filed on a weekly basis. There's quite a bit happening. So when you are reviewing this data, something that I do also encourage you to do is you may have seen this earlier when I pulled up one of the prompts to create a brief is that you can schedule these briefs as well. So as I'm scrolling down here, you'll see that we have different summaries, different components that are relevant and potentially something that you could apply to your own use cases. I do have a link to the entire brief here, but as we scroll down, you could also see that hopefully these end up rendering. It looks like they're not. Let me do a quick refresh here. But what we should be seeing here are charts that illustrate how different themes within the patents data set, and in this context, it's specifically around automotive. Let me try to scroll back down over there, and hopefully we have this working. You're able to see some of the trends. Here we go. We've got these line charts that show you how these different themes and patent filings are trending. You can see on the right side what the mix is in terms of applications as well as those that are granted, as well as the companies that are involved in this. And from a competitive intelligence perspective, this is incredibly important, right? Being able to see which companies are associated with which technologies that they're pursuing. And when you think about this from other contexts, not just M&A or from a corporate development perspective, from a marketing perspective, thinking of it myself as a marketer, this is data that I'd love to be able to keep an eye on a regular basis just to see who may be making a push for a given set of technology that may end up showing up in their products in the future. And you can see here that we have summaries of the patents that are being filed, as well as just a high level overview or a high level title around what that theme is. You can see that we've extracted the top set of insights from those briefs. And in the past, if you've had the opportunity to play with our patents data sets in Quid Discover, this would take a significant amount of work. And I know from personal experience, because I've done this before in working with some of our internal teams who may be looking for deeper analyses, especially because they caught wind of some of the work that we did with Intel before. We've spent quite a bit of time in ensuring that the insights that you would extract in a Quid Discover network like this, as beautiful as it is to look at, we made sure that what these Q agents are able to do is to extract the most relevant insights based on your target objectives, your business outcomes, and to be able to provide you with a summary, the current landscape in terms of trends over time, who the key players are. You can see the top assignees here, where the most activity is taking place, as well as the different clusters in similar themes and similar technology that's being filed through these patents. What you'll also see is that we have a deeper report. So both of these, the last two tabs that we're looking at, were created through the Q agents that we're looking at in the library that I showed you earlier in this session. But you can see here that the brief that we're looking at has a lot of the same data that you have in this brief. I did expand the charts a little bit more to make sure that they were easier to read. But really, now when you're thinking about including this data as part of your analysis and better understanding your market, hopefully what you're able to see is that there are different themes that can certainly be applicable to someone who may be in the automotive space, that is in a marketing role or in a communications role or even an innovation role, that could be incredibly useful when packaging this along with analyses of consumer conversations. Let me take this another step and also show off the output of our company's data set. So if you're not familiar with our company's data set, this data actually goes back to 2010. This is updated daily, and this does include public and private data. It's something that many general LLMs are not able to access. So we are able to see data from companies that have not yet gone public as part of this data set. And similar to the patents, Q agent and what the output looks like in terms of the briefs. You'll see that there's an overview and a summary, and also different thematic clusters, as well as just summaries of these clusters and the most relevant findings from them, whether it's the different examples that are representative of this cluster. You could also see that we also have charts that help you to get a quick visual around the ages of these companies, as well as the sizes of these companies. And these all start to come into play. Hopefully what you're able to see here is that we're introducing additional data that could help to inform broader strategies beyond just the social data. You could also see here that, like the patents data set, where the most activity is taking place in terms of M&A and investments. And recognizing that we're coming up on the bottom of the hour here, I also want to make sure that we have enough time for questions. Let me jump over to our earnings calls as well. So for many of us, you may be familiar with our certified topic for earnings calls in Quid Monitor. Rather than going into Quid Monitor and taking a deep dive into this and spending time extracting insights, which you're still more than welcome to do, our Q agents actually do this for you. So what you'll see here is similar to the two previous data sets. We summarize it. We do include specific quotes, mentions of different companies, as well as the different trends for a given sector. So what you'll see is all of this is very specific to the automotive industry. And what's really, what I feel like is the most impactful data and findings from these kinds of briefs is actually the forward-looking commentary. So talking about, going back to what I was talking about earlier with regard to being able to perceive depth and to be able to see further into the future, that's exactly what this section here addresses, where you have forward-looking commentary from leadership at these companies within this space that illustrate and are bucketed into confident statements, into cautious statements, and uncertain statements. So there's a lot of insights to be able to extract as part of these briefs. Now, how do you take all this information, put it all together, and actually make sense of it and look at them holistically? I'm going to jump back into our brief because that's exactly what the objective of putting together a brief like this is. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top here. And like I was mentioning earlier, the beauty in being able to create these briefs through Q agents is that something that may have taken you 2 to 3 to 4 hours to do now just takes minutes in terms of being able to extract insights from it. And that way you could spend a lot more time in analyzing and figuring out how to best utilize that information to drive your broader strategy. And as another way to be able to enhance that process, in aggregating that information into a brief like this, which is certainly something that we're able to help you out with if you request a custom Q agent, we could obviously build this in a way that's most relevant to you and include the data sets that are relevant to you as well, hopefully including patents, companies, and Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 data sets. But in compiling all this data together, what you now have is a foundation and a basis to be able to ask Q questions based on the objectives that you have as a team or as an individual, or slicing this data up in a way that allows you to be able to hyper focus on specific regions or specific segments within your customers. So the example that I have over here is I asked it, as a marketer, if I were in the automotive space, what are 5 actions I could take based on this brief? And what you can see here is within a minute, we have a response that's based on the findings and the data that is included as part of this brief. And I'm rolling the dice here, but if anyone wants me to ask any questions of this brief using Ask Q, please feel free to pop it into the Q&A. I am happy to ask this questions as I'm talking through it. But what you'll also see here is that you have the ability to ask follow-up questions. If I wanted to be able to see what the recommendations are for product innovation teams, what you'll see here is while there may be some similarities in terms of themes, there are also differences as well. This emphasis on AI and software integration, as well as targeting specific niches in terms of customer needs. These are these are all based on the data that's been analyzed by our Q agents, that's been presented as insights in those briefs and compiled as part of this brief as well. And something that I also like to do is, let me scroll down here. I like to also be able to understand what the difference is in consumer conversations as well as the market data, uh, where where companies are investing time and effort in innovation, and whether or not that's reflected in consumer conversations. Because obviously, if there's a gap there, that's a potential opportunity for someone in this space to be able to get ahead of their competition. And so let me just scroll down over here. You can see that I've asked a question about core differences between social media narratives and themes from the patents and investments data. AskQ is able to help you to understand what those differences are, breaking it down in terms of the different themes, as well as pointing out the core differences between those two data sets, the insights from them. You can also see here that we have a summary table that gives you a high-level overview of what these differences are. So really, this gives you so much flexibility in the way that you extract insights and understand which actions to take from this data, and to be able to do so much faster than you would have had the opportunity to do so in the past, or at least had the ability to do so in the past. And what I encourage you all to do, if you're not familiar with these parts of our website, we do have our How Quid Works page, which goes into detail about the different Q agents that are accessible. If you're not currently on Quid Terminal right now, we do have our library available for you to view on our public-facing website in case you're curious to learn more about them. So with us being at the bottom of the hour, I'm going to go ahead and move us over to our Q&A, and let me pull up the questions that we have here. So let's see. I've got a question here from Dan. How long does it take for Q agents to create a brief? Really, that's dependent on the model itself as well as the output of the briefs. What I was showing you earlier in terms of the patents Q agents as well as the company's Q agents, that there could be a significant amount of information on those insights briefs. So a lot of it's really dependent on the amount of time that it takes to be able to package those briefs together for a Q agent to be able to do so. But it only does take a couple of minutes for it to do. And the number of minutes is obviously it's dependent on the size of the data set and the way that it presents it as part of those insights briefs. I've got a question here from Renee. Where do you source your patents and investment data from? So our patents data is through Clarivate Analytics, through a partnership with them. Our company's data sets are through S&P Capital and Crunchbase. And like I mentioned before, we could go back quite far with our patents data sets, going all the way back to 1960. With our company's data set, we could go back to 2010 in terms of understanding financial related information as well as their activity, their market activity, as part of that data set as well. Excuse me. All right. Millie, it looks like she may have caught me scrolling through our TikTok data there, but I think this is actually a really good question. Is your TikTok data compliant? Yes, it's absolutely compliant. We actually we have a formal partnership with TikTok. We utilize their Discovery API to be able to extract TikTok data and to be able to include them as part of the data sets that are available through our core products as well as Quid Terminal and the Q agents. We also have partnerships with Meta, with Reddit, with X, as well as YouTube. And something that I do want to emphasize for folks who are curious about how we acquire data, we do not collect any data from sites that prohibit third-party data collection. So with Quid, you never have to worry about your insights going dark as a result of us losing a specific data set because we may have been acquiring it in a way that is non-compliant. So we are compliant. By extension, you'll be compliant as well in using your Quid data So you could trust not just the insights that we're extracting, but also the fact that we're acquiring our data in a way that is compliant with different vendors, as well as policies for web retention, data retention on the web. There you go. I got that out. Um, all right, I've got a question here from Jacqueline. Was the document created by a Q agent? How are those visualizations at the top created? Like I mentioned at the top of the call, I said 99%, maybe it's something like 98% of the brief that we're looking at was created by Q agents. Um, the 1 or the 2% are the network visualizations. So with those, while we have a Q agent that does extract those insights and generates a network for you. The additional step there is exporting the image of the network visualization. But the copy, the insights, those are all generated by briefs. So, like I said, 98% of the brief was created through Q agents. All right, I've got a couple of questions in here. Francesco Delisanti, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Not sure why I used your full name there. But are you able to plug in customer data or third-party data and integrate with your licensed ones? You absolutely can. I know I'm going to get a slap on the wrist from someone internally for not mentioning that sooner, but yes, you are able to include your own proprietary data. We have folks who are ingesting their products lists, their CRM data. From a healthcare perspective, we have customer and patient data that we're including as part of these models. So yes, you're certainly more than welcome to do so. And we do have a number of different integrations and ways to be able to connect our platform to yours. I do recommend, Francesco, reaching out to your contact here at Quid. And like I offered earlier, if you don't currently have one, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to make the connection internally with you. All right. Myru, I may have to follow up with you on this one. I'll be sure to reach out to you directly. But your question about Meta having rate limiters on data capture, how deep are you able to go on Meta data across Facebook and Instagram? So what I can say here is, as a result of our partnership, I don't have the specific numbers, but we're able to extract the maximum amount that we're able to. That's compliant with them. If you need additional details, please feel free to reach out about it. But when folks are utilizing those data sets, we are capturing as much as possible through either our partnerships or through our APIs, which are extracting data from public facing sources that have public APIs. All right. I'd like to thank you all again for joining us on this webinar today. Like I said, please visit our resources section. I also encourage you all, if you are currently using Quid Terminal, and hopefully this sparks some ideas in terms of custom Q agents that we could develop for you. Please reach out to your outcome engineer. They'll be able to help you out in understanding how to scope that out and to be able to build one for you. But for everyone else, I'd also like to just thank you for your time today. Hopefully you found what we were sharing today insightful at a high level, and also gave you a sneak peek into some of our capabilities here at Quid. So again, thank you all. We hope to see you all again next time, and I encourage you to keep coming back to our resources section. We update our blogs every single week, at least once, if not twice. So there's always a lot of good stuff in there for you to be able to borrow from and take inspiration from in terms of the work you're doing. So again, until next time, thank you all again.